There is a terrifying and beautiful geometry that governs the silent architecture of your existence. It is a hidden blueprint, a secret schematic that remains invisible to the naked eye until the final walls begin to close in. Most of us walk through the corridors of our days, blindfolded by the mundane, distracted by the flashing lights of the immediate, failing to perceive the structural integrity of our own lives until the roof begins to buckle under the weight of time. We live our lives engaged in a tragic, cannibalistic trade, a marketplace of the soul where we unknowingly consume our own essence to purchase things that possess no pulse. Look closely at the modern condition. We incinerate the golden vitality of our youth in the roaring, insatiable furnace of ambition. We are desperate to smelt status, to forge security out of vapor, to accumulate titles that will eventually be carved into cold stone and forgotten by the rain. We burn the candle not just at both ends, but at the center, melting the wax of our life force with a reckless ferocity. We spend the vibrant, sun-drenched summer of our lives ignoring the biological cost, only to find ourselves in the harsh, unforgiving winter, begging on our knees to buy back the very heat we so carelessly extinguished. We trade our biology for a biography, only to realize, often when the shadows are long, that the story means nothing if the vessel that carries it is broken beyond repair. But allow me to shatter a comfortable, dangerous illusion that you may be harboring in the quiet, dusty corners of your mind. You likely view your future self, the version of you that will exist at 80 years old, as a stranger. You imagine a distant figure, perhaps frail, perhaps formidable, waiting in the foggy landscape of someday. You see them as a separate entity that you will eventually walk toward and meet, shaking hands across the divide of decades. This is a hallucination. That person is not waiting for you. That person is being sculpted right now. They are being formed, cell by microscopic cell, synaptic firing by synaptic firing, in this precise millisecond. With every choice you make, you are placing a brick. Whether that figure is trapped in a wheelchair, bitter and calcified by regret, or walking through a garden with a straight spine and a heart radiating beatific peace, is being determined by the posture you hold as you listen to these words. You are not waiting for old age. You are manufacturing it. Welcome, fellow traveler, to the dissection of reality. If you have ever caught your reflection in a darkened window and noticed the first subtle erosion of time across your face, the faint lines that map the history of your stress, or felt a subterranean tremor of anxiety about who you will become when the adrenaline of youth evaporates, this frequency is for you. We are about to decode the invisible contract you have signed with time itself. We navigate the chaotic, high-voltage currents of the modern epoch under a potent hypnotic spell, the delusion of infinite time. We treat our physiology and our consciousness like indestructible assets, like a bank vault with no bottom. We withdraw energy, we withdraw sleep, we withdraw peace, regardless of how recklessly we deplete the reserves. We wake, we rush, we consume. We flood our delicate nervous systems with cortisol and adrenaline, laboring under the fantasy that the biological consequences are problems for a distant future self, a ghost we have not yet met. We believe we can abuse the machine today and repair it tomorrow. But in the diamond, sharp, uncompromising wisdom of Vajrayana, the thunderbolt to enlightenment, there is no such thing as a sudden descent. The avalanche does not happen by accident. It happens because the snowflakes piled up, one by one, unnoticed, until the friction coefficient was overcome by gravity. Decrepitude does not ambush you the moment you extinguish the candles on your 70th birthday. That is merely the unveiling. That is the ribbon-cutting ceremony of a building you have been constructing for decades. The reality is that old age is a cumulative architectural project. It is a cathedral of light, or it is a prison of bone. You are laying the brickwork for this structure right now, with every forkful of food you ingest. With every hour of restorative sleep you prioritize or neglect. And most importantly, with every thought you entertain in the privacy of your own skull. Consider, for a moment, the physics of your spirit. This is not poetry, this is cause and effect. Every time you choose to swallow a toxic emotion, bitterness, jealousy, rage rather than metabolizing it and releasing it, you are not being polite. You are laying a brick of calcified resentment in the foundation of your future psyche. You are storing poison in the marrow of your bones. Every time you choose sedentary stagnation over the kinetic movement of your life force, you are cementing a wall of fascial stiffness that will one day imprison you in your own skin. The anxiety you nurture and feed today becomes the essential tremor of tomorrow. The contract is not signed on your deathbed. It is being signed, clause by irrevocable clause, with every unconscious breath you take in the present. We tremble at the thought of the decay of the flesh. We fear the hollow silence of irrelevance. But this decay is not a punishment handed down by a vengeful deity or a blind, cruel fate. It is simply the harvest. It is the biological resonance of the seeds, the neuroplastic habits, the dietary inputs, the emotional suppressions, and the spiritual negligences that we are scattering into the soil of our lives at this very moment. To secure a harvest of radiant stillness and dignity in the winter, we cannot wait for the first frost. We must tend to the soil now in the violently hot heat of our summer. Let us radically shift the aperture which we view this physical vessel. Close your eyes for a moment and feel the gravitational pull on your skeleton. In the middle way, we avoid the extremes. We view the body not as an idol to be worshipped, vanity-obsessed with smooth skin, for it is impermanent and subject to entropy. Nor do we view it as a beast to be flogged, ignored, and pushed to breaking point. We view it as the precious vehicle. It is the biological boat carrying your consciousness across the turbulent, chaotic river of samsara. Without the boat, you cannot cross the water. If you punch holes in the hull today, you will drown tomorrow. The body is brutally, biologically honest. It possesses no capacity for deception. It does not process your excuses. It is indifferent to your deadlines, your career trajectory, or your empty promises of starting a new regimen next week. The body acts as a biological accountant, keeping a ledger that cannot be cooked. It records every transaction. When you move with intention, it records lubrication and vitality in the synovial fluid of your joints. When you stagnate in front of blue light screens, bathing in artificial radiation, it records atrophy, inflammation, and blockage. In youth, the body possesses a deceptive, seductive quality resilience. It offers a grace period. It seems to absorb the sleepless nights, the nutritional poisons, and the psychological toxicity without immediate collapse. But this is a dangerous illusion. You are not getting away with it. You are merely accumulating compound interest on a massive debt. The law of cause and effect karma is absolute physics. It never loses count. Old age is simply the moment the grace period expires. The accountant steps out from the shadows and presents the bill. Every loan you took out against your adrenal glands, every compromise you made with your spinal alignment, every debt incurred against your nervous system, it all comes due. Old age is not cruel, it is exacting. It is accurate. It is the sum total of your choices staring back at you in the mirror. Therefore, the maintenance of this vessel is not vanity. It is a profound spiritual discipline. It is an act of reverence. When you stretch, you are not just shaping muscle. You are ensuring the channels of prana, the rivers of chi, remain unobstructed, allowing the energy of the universe to flow through you. When you choose high vibration fuel over processed poison, you are respecting the temple that houses the infinite. You are caring for your joints today so that 20 years from now, you possess the ultimate wealth, the freedom of movement. To be able to tie your own shoes at 90 is a victory that begins at 30. But there is a deeper layer to this excavation. There is a truth that the modern world spends trillions to obscure. Pain is data. We inhabit a culture that is phobic of sensation. We are terrified of discomfort. The moment a headache blooms, we amputate the signal with chemistry. When fatigue pulls at our eyelids, we artificially spike our voltage with stimulants. We treat somatic signals as system errors, as glitches that must be silenced to maintain our productivity. We numb ourselves to the messages of the soul. Listen closely to the architecture of your suffering. Pain is the language of the vessel. It is the voice of your intuitive intelligence screaming for alignment. When you feel that tension in the trapezius, your body is whispering. It is pleading for an adjustment in your trajectory. If you sever the connection, the body raises the volume. The whisper becomes a shout. The tension becomes a spasm. Ignore the shout, and it becomes a scream. Chronic pathology, structural failure, a forced stop. The body's patience is vast, but it is not infinite. To age with mastery, you must become a translator of your own biology. Do not view the symptom as a hostile invader. View it as a wrathful dakini, a fierce, terrifying teacher in Tibetan Buddhism who comes to guide you back to the center. She appears scary only to the ego, but her intent is pure liberation. She brings the fire to burn away what is false. Interrogate your sensation. Why does the lower lumbar ache? Is it merely the ergonomics of your chair, or is it the financial terror you are carrying, the survival fear settling into the root chakra? Why are the shoulders turning to stone? Is it the weight of carrying expectations that do not belong to you? Mind and body are not adjacent, they are entangled. They are one system. Unresolved grief, unexpressed rage, and metabolized fear do not vanish into the ether. They sediment. They undergo a chemical phase change and calcify into the tissues. The arthritis of the spirit eventually manifests as the arthritis of the bone. If you do not master the art of emotional release now, your old age will be heavy. You will be forced to drag the necrotic corpse of your past traumas into your future. a burden that will bend your back and dim your eyes. If the body is the vehicle, the mind is the navigator. But observe the cockpit of your consciousness. Are you steering, or are you being hijacked? For the majority, the mind is a wild, untamed stallion, dragging the consciousness through thorn bushes of neurotic projection, replaying past regrets, and simulating catastrophic futures that exist only in imagination. Here, we apply the radical insight of neuroplasticity. You cannot silence the mind through brute force. You cannot fight the darkness with a stick. You must turn on the light. You must cultivate the mind, like a garden, through the geometry of repetition. What you think, you structurally become. A single thought is a thread of a spiderweb, fragile, ephemeral. But think that thought every morning for a decade, and it becomes a steel cable. It becomes a superhighway of neural firing. If you spend your youth practicing cynicism, judgment, and complaint, you are physically wiring your brain to perceive a hostile reality. By the time you reach the winter of your life, you will be entombed in a mental prison of your own design, unable to perceive light, even if you are standing in the sun. You will be an old person who is bitter, not because the world is bitter, but because you practiced bitterness until it became your default setting. Conversely, if you practice gratitude as a discipline, not a sentiment, but as a cognitive rep, a heavy lift for the soul, you build a sanctuary. You wire your brain to scan for beauty, for safety, for connection. You build a palace of perception that will shelter you when the outer world grows cold. The critical skill to master before the body fades is the distinction between thinking and awareness. Thinking is the relentless narration, the egoic chatter that claims, I am fading, I am alone, I am in pain. This is a vampire on your life force. Awareness is the dimension behind the chatter. Imagine your consciousness as the vast, immaculate sky. Thoughts and emotions are merely weather patterns clouds passing through. Some are violent thunderstorms, some are white mist. The untrained mind believes, I am the storm. The awakened mind knows, I am the sky. The sky is never wet by the rain. The sky is never scorched by the lightning. It contains them, but is not defined by them. Old age will bring storms. It will bring the clouds of bereavement, the fog of sickness, the rain of loss. But if you have trained your identity to reside in the sky and not the clouds, you will remain untouched. You will possess a dignified, radiant stillness that no external circumstance can fracture. This brings us to the art of the open hand. Here lies the genesis of human suffering. We do not suffer because life removes things from us. We suffer because we refuse to open our grip. The fundamental law of the cosmos is impermanence anicca. Everything is in a state of flux. The atoms in your body are vibrating, dying, and rebirthing in this very second. Empires turn to dust as seasons bleed into one another. Suffering is the friction created when we demand that the dance stops. We cling to the static. We want the summer to last forever, but the leaves must fall so the tree can survive the winter. Old age is the ultimate masterclass in surrender. It is the season where the illusion of control is violently stripped away. If you enter that season with a clenched fist, desperately trying to hold on to the avatar of your youth, clutching your former status, clinging to children who must walk their own path, you will break. That which is rigid shatters in the wind, that which is fluid survives. We must practice the art of the open hand now, while the stakes are lower. Practice the micro deaths. When a driver cuts you off, release the rage, open the hand. When a plan disintegrates, release the expectation, open the hand. When you declutter your physical space, release the objects that anchor you to a dead past. Each act of release is a repetition in the gym of the spirit. You are training to be water, not stone. The more you practice the mechanics of letting go today, the lighter your load will be when you embark on the final leg of the journey. You must travel light to pass through the eye of the needle. Discipline. We taste this word, and it often tastes like ash. We associate it with punishment, with restriction, with the gray walls of a prison. Let us transmute this lead into gold. Discipline is, in its highest frequency, compassion for your future self. When you turn away from the blue light to sleep, you are not restricting yourself. You are sending a care package of clarity and cellular repair to the person. You will be tomorrow morning. When you choose moderation over excess, you are protecting the person you will be in a decade from the fires of systemic inflammation. Authentic discipline is not the cinematic montage of heroic effort. It is the quiet, unglamorous power of consistency. It is the compound interest of the soul. A human who cannot command their own attention, who is a slave to every dopamine notification, every glucose spike, every flash of anger is not free. They are a biological puppet, pulled by the strings of impulse. As we age, the relationship with the self becomes the only relationship that remains guaranteed. If you have spent a lifetime breaking promises to yourself, you will arrive at old age with a deep, corrosive sense of self-distrust. You will feel betrayed by your own history. But if you stack a lifetime of small victories, decades of showing up, of meditating when you were resistant, of moving when you were exhausted, you build a reservoir of self-respect that is impregnable. You enter the final chapter as the captain, not the cargo. Finally, the ultimate preparation for the future is to cease living in it. This is the cognitive dissonance we must resolve. We spend our youth preparing to live. We say, I will exhale when I achieve the title. I will find peace when the mortgage is dead. I will truly be alive when I retire. We treat the present moment as a waiting room, a purgatory we must endure to reach the promised land. But one day, the realization strikes with the force of a thunderbolt. The waiting room was the life. The life you were anticipating has already passed you by while you were looking at the clock. The practice of mindfulness, radical, sensory presence anchors us in the only dimension that possesses reality, the now. The past is a memory trace, a ghost in the neurons. The future is a hallucination, a projection. Life is occurring only here, in the texture of this breath, in the hum of this silence, in the light filtering through the room, in the sensation of your feet on the ground. When you cultivate the capacity to be present, every inhalation becomes a miracle. Every meal becomes a communion with the elements. Every conversation becomes a sacred exchange of energy. If you can locate the frequency of joy in the simple act of existing right now, you will find joy in old age, even if your mobility narrows, because your joy is not tethered to external conquest. It is sourced from the miracle of consciousness itself. My friends, Do not gaze upon old age as a descent into the dark. View it as a mirror that will reflect the absolute truth of how you lived. It is an amplifier. It will magnify what is already there. If you plant seeds of resentment, you will harvest a dark forest of bitterness. But if you plant seeds of awareness, gentleness, and steel discipline today, you will harvest a golden field of wisdom. You do not have to wait for the body to falter to find the truth. You do not have to wait for the tragedy to cherish the breath. Tear up the old contract. Write a new one today. Treat this vessel as a temple, not a landfill. Listen to your pain as a prophet, not a nuisance. Observe your thoughts like clouds, not facts, and hold this fleeting, beautiful world with an open hand. The elder you will become is watching you right now through the eyes of time, waiting for you to make choices that will set them free. May you build a sanctuary of peace within yourself that time cannot erode.